Chish, oel te kat Johan. Jaya I tatawe watua ach to yukatangi. Ya Moana Jackson I do a sako e weka. Maurich sati. Ye awe wasa ach to wasaku uhan su to saku. Stuk at the hin. Het is teinach ka aya yak kutlak ka awuchin ye kakwati. Yew a dati tuchtatan wan kanins. Datich so has to kosti. Ya hatlagu konkiyan. Chayeku kinki aya utusaku. A des konuku ye a joe konachoe hatu wasaku. Ha itasudishi. Ya ha ye jini. Kidzi wan kanins. Chaltakat ye chawe. Atlain awe. Shkadliyeshi ataya kutsati. Ya hadat. Hashagun hastudat. Wasahatu wasaku ya ha itiqaku hasau saku. Dat yaksawe has wasa has kutzake. Wasa ya has kutzake. Wasa has tu litsin. Ajawe achtu wasaku shakat ku shkun aya wuchin gachtulayech. Ya ha yukatangi tunach aya hatu wasaku kutzati. Yek kwatil te katyuhan. Chish yek echawe. Yito agesagu yuhan.
Si kun Masi Moana Jackson go sayash harin hakten sarikati ana masi kana
Tak juice.
In Haganan u ik kunisi kuigas ek good get. Because our precious ancestors are sacred and important.
Sheesh. So we watched a video by Moana Jackson, and several topics just sort of really touched my heart when I listened to him speak. The ways that colonization is addressed, and also a liberation, in whatever form that's going to take. And that's a lot of the stuff that we talk about in this class. There's a whole bunch of terminology, a whole bunch of ideas, a whole bunch of other stuff. At the core is trying to just build up a critical mass of speakers that you can say you have a language movement. And you say this is going to quite potentially last forever. One of our elders said, my prayer will be this, that let Tlingit exist forever. And so I think about these things a lot, and I wanted us to just maybe respond to this, and then we'll transition to greeting each other in our language, which we're going to begin doing at the beginning of every class. Just coming up with a phrase that we can share with each other, just so that we're hearing our languages, as we have several languages in this same shared space, as we come together, as we talk about a future that we can envision, that is perhaps the dream of our ancestors, which is also us. Hastujuni chasiti. We're the dream of our ancestors who survived incredible brutalities on a whole wide variety of levels. All these conversations going on right now about residential schools and boarding schools, and just a variety of ways that Indigenous peoples have been displaced and attacked and erased. and how many of these things are talked about in a past tense thing, or maybe not even talked about at all. And I think was maybe the ultimate act of dehumanization is that we're going to do all this stuff and then act like it never happened. And these are the terms that some people use. They'll give it a label like critical race theory, and they'll say it's un-American. But in some ways, maybe it is, because American, historically, has been pretty racist. And that racism seeks to erase and destroy things that are not itself. I think when we look at language reclamation and language revitalization and language revival, we're often looking at overcoming some of these very things, which can exist within individuals, within families, can exist within communities and institutions, and can certainly exist in governments. So does anybody have a thought you want to share after listening to this? Kuchin.
Yeah, I really like how we started off with the analogy with the wall. You know, it kind of reminded me of about a week ago. I was in English. I was getting ready to do a assignment in Clinkit, and I was like, "All right, let's tear it up." And I thought about it. I was like, "Well, this is a language activity. You know, I'm not, you know, mentally, you know, you don't want to destroy it." And that kind of Western mentality of being separate from the thing and taking. I really like it when you say we are the thing. You know, me, you, all of our peers. You know, we are as a collective whole, the concept that brings back our language. And so when he said that real power comes from that realization that you're connected to your language, your ancestors, and the land, and it gives you what he called a sense of authority to not make submissions as a suggestion, to, you know, make statements and not, yeah, just that interconnectivity to the land, and being able to recognize that before you go about doing anything.
Okay.
So good teach.
Sheesh. Other thoughts? Duck juice?
How, well, there's several things that I like that he said. And I practically ran out of space taking notes, but I tried to sum up what he said when he's during this part, when he says, we are the sum of all that's been and the best of what's to follow. The power of our ancestors is still with us. And to not give, to not put any colonization rights over us. That that we are to use our languages, declare intent, and not be submissive, but to make statements.
Hawa. Susu?
I was really wishing I had enough background knowledge in my language to make a statement, and I needed more time to try to construct something based on what I know. First off, and then second, there was so many things that resonate. It's like hard to even pick out a few. And so I will kind of second the thought. And it's hard to remember the names of the people who are there with you on site, but the guy on site and how that analogy helped shape like everything for the whole rest of the talk. And to have that parallel and to have that visible picture of the wall. and then how Mother Earth, which is a English term as well as a native way of looking at the land. I mean, he labeled it last, but he talked about our relationship with the earth being like she is our mother instead of us having dominion over. And because he put that visualization in our heads, like I was able to take it to so many different ties and so many references beyond not only what he said, and how he talked about the story as the medium, and even made everybody giggle that his stories all are based with his grandchildren, like that set a tone and gave permission and reminded us how it, like one of the things that have been really trying to put in words is how Native Indigenous ways of teaching and learning is about the learner. Like, we are not dictating what you're going to get out of this talk. I am presenting a story that will be so relatable to you at wherever you are. We can all grow. And so grounding us in that first. And then I also wanted to touch upon the not submission, but statements, and particularly how we need to step away. And I'm just now getting to this point of stepping away from this is what you did, or this is what's happening, and into, he said, dare them to show where their authority come from, and dare them to, like, I wish I was writing fast enough to remember what he said next, where it's actually not on me to prove, not on me to prove our system is broken, that I'm actually wanting us both to be in a good place. So the oppressor should be the one to prove why they have the authority. And it's not because I'm accusing, but I'm actually imploring. I'm wanting to work with you here. Like, we're in this together for real. And where we're starting from is not right. But I shouldn't be the one with the need to prove that. I just like loved the places, and I didn't get the notes that I wanted to, and I actually want to ask, how can we find it so that I could watch it again?
Yeah, yeah. Let me respond to that, and let me also, here's my other sort of, the next 3 quarters of the semester. Here's a big question I want you to ask yourself. How can your language movement be a reflection of your people? So that it's like a mirror or a lens into the homes of your ancient people. It's an absolute reflection of the vibrant people who are alive today, and it's an absolute pillar of a home that's going to be for future generations. So and it's distinctly, like, you go to Hawaii and you look at their program, and it's distinctly Hawaiian. And the same with, if you were to go to Aotearoa and look at some of their programs, they're distinctly Maori. And so to come back to your question, so over the weekend, I'm going to begin constructing a website where all the course material from this course and other courses will be housed, which includes links to some of the, like, I could link to YouTube pretty safely. For articles, I'll probably have to say, here's the article we read. You might have to go find it. If you're a student of the University of Alaska, if you're in this class, we got a Google folder for it. But I don't want to get in trouble. I've had lawyers write me letters before, and they're not the letters that are like, gee, you're cool. They're letters that are like, we're coming. We're on our way. We're come get you. So yeah, I don't like copyright. I don't like academia. I want us to engage in a few conversations as well. Don't let anybody try to lay claim to your language. Don't let any, yeah, I love people who come and work with us. I love our allies. Don't let any white person come in and do work and then assume that they now own that stuff. Don't allow that to happen, and ask and challenge, dare them. Who are you? Who are you? You think you can come work with our elders and then tell us we can't do what we want with this stuff? And I'm ready. I've had those fights. I don't want to relive them or replay them. But also just be aware. And I want to have some conversations too about making sure people have access, making sure that uh, the information is not going to be taken. I've seen it. I've seen whole wonderful, amazing resources just vanish when somebody got mad and left and went to go somewhere else because they can. You know, we're rooted into our communities, and this is not to say anybody's not welcome or not equal to us, but I have seen it where people come in and they get the glory, they get the power, and then they get to leave. So if you're going to build something, how do you not have those same hierarchies, and how do you not have those same the patriarchy and the perversive nature? But there will be a link to this video so you watch it over and over again. I've watched literally portions of it and written down every single word that he said so that I conclude it. Sometimes I'm making a presentation. There's a big, huge, long quote from him because there's such wonderful chunks of information in there. Heather.
Thank you. I was just going to say that defining everything on your own terms, that's something that really spoke to me. And that's basically what you were talking about. It's yours, and you define it, you make it. Like we're creating this education consortium, and the conversations are, what do we do? And it's like, we have the power to do it. We're creating it. And it's not a place that people who are in a colonial setting, this is not an experience that we normally have, because normally it's dictated to us. So it feels strange. And then when he said about the poetic sensibility of the struggle and being a source of strength, that was a noble resistance, I think was a term he used. And I have seen that in so many people that are heroes to me that I've met here, and in many different forms. So I think that is really beautiful, a beautiful concept and a source of strength. And also just to thank you for saying that Alaska Native ways of teaching and is for the learner, and it's good for all learners. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and I would agree. I turned in a big portfolio of my work, so I was reviewing everything I've done here at the university, which includes a lot of student responses. And it's really interesting to me how many, I don't usually know what I'm doing. I'm not very organized. I'm just like, let's just do the things and figure out how to do the things together. So I really like a class where it's like, okay, let's get together, share some things, some things, look at some things, talk about what we're trying to do, and collaborate on creating an improved process. I do think for some students that's disorienting because the professor is supposed to be the master of the knowledge, and I'm going to sit here and belt it out to you for 60 minutes, and then you're going to leave as full vessels. And I'm like really not about that at all, because I don't know. I listen to people who've done this type of stuff. I'm engaging in trying to, continue to learn languages and continue to teach them, and also continue to sort of figure out how can we just continue to do this and then help others do this, and then collaborate so that we have a collective, not of experts, but of people who are doing the work, and then to sort of figure out what's the next steps for us. Anyone else?
I like the part you said about relationships. I think about that a lot because I've been researching relationships. And I think about it too as a language scholar because, it's kind of like being an independent contractor versus like a W-2 employee. And I've worked for some pretty controlling organizations before that felt they had to right to call you and text you on your off time and make you feel like you're a bad person if you're not there on the weekends and you didn't stay late and you took a lunch and it was an unexcused absence. And I internalized a lot of that toxic relationship dynamics. And it's taken me a while to recover from that and rethink the way I interact with myself and my family and other people. And I think that really resonated with me because it is an act of self-determination to do what you know is right, and then also acknowledge that other people have a right to their own sovereignty and self-determination. So like replacing power and control with consent and respect. And I feel like that's taken me so far in my well-being and in my professional relationships and in school. So I think that part of his speech really spoke to me, Matthew.
I see. Yeah, and I do think there's these weird boundaries sometimes where sovereignty becomes our right to do what they do ourselves, right? Which is not always the case, but it's also it's very complicated in terms of what should we be doing. So I was working with one Indigenous group, and I was like, well, why don't we just go over to the clan house that right down there and just hang out there and sing songs and just be ourselves. And someone said, well, the government pays us to be here. I was like, what government? Hold on. This is sovereign. They give us like this money, and they're not coming. And even if they do, let's have a big argument with them. But so sometimes as we sort of, and this is important in education, because sometimes we're going to come in to be language teachers, and we're going to have someone tell us, or we might think it ourselves, or we might just naturalize to it. We have to do what teachers do. But that's not always the case, right? It's not always the exact same thing as this. There's certainly, we want to grab everything that's going to help us. And so I was thinking of these sort of charts. I'm going to make a little chart because I like to plot things out. It's like, what's going to help us? What's not going to help us? What do we want to do? What do we not want to do? Because sometimes you're going to have stuff you don't want to do but helps you. And you have some stuff that you do want to do but doesn't help you. And by helping you, I'm talking about the whole language movement. Because there might be things that are just wonderful, but then they turn out to be, it takes so much time and energy and time, and you gotta be in English for so much of the time to describe the thing that sometimes you gotta ditch it. And so some of the things that I've been thinking about in these last kind of 10 minutes, there's a couple of things I want you folks to try. I don't want you to buy anything. You should be able to get a free trial to this thing. We'll see how it works. I'm going to show you some basics, and we're gonna just goof around with this on Monday. I know I told you folks to draw or design or come up with the organizations that are linked to your language movement. I know that could be very complicated. I started thinking, I was like, oh, we got Gold Bell Heritage Foundation, Sea Alaska Heritage Institute. We've got Tlingit Central Council of Tlingit Haida, University of Alaska Southeast, Teslin Tlingit Council, the Hoonah School District, Sitka Tribe of Alaska. It starts to go all over the place. But I think it's healthy to actually map out how that stuff works, because if one of the things that colonialism also does is divides us into a million fragments. And then those fragments fight with each other over who's doing what and who's in charge. And I don't know how many times I've been in a situation where I'm like, oh, well, we could all do it, but the leader of that organization doesn't like the leader of that organization, so we can't get them in the same room to just get together and just do a thing. And so sometimes it becomes personal. Sometimes the institution has its history. Like, oh yeah, those guys voted against us back in 1992, so now it's over, right? And so, but I do think it's important to map this stuff out as well, to say, if you're going to construct a future where, for a lot of us, for Yupik, it's probably saying, we would like half of our people to be speaking our language. We're at half right now. Maybe we'd like to get up to 60%, 70%. For St. Lawrence Island, Yupik, it's a different scenario. They've got probably 100%, 90%. So those are looking at stabilization. We're trying to keep the language stable. For Yupik, it might be trying to increase. Not every village is the same as well. You might have villages where 20, 30% of the people maybe talk. We got some other languages, though, where you might be down to 6 speakers, 2 speakers, no speakers. You got to have a different strategy for those languages. But what I'm trying to think of, as I've been sort of putting this stuff down and thinking about it, I want to start looking at this thing a little bit. I'm going to show you a little bit of Miro. I know we're still talking. We'll pick this up on Monday. But I got to show you a couple things as far as what we're trying to do. I'm going to walk through this presentation on Monday, I've got the GIDs in here. I've got some other stuff that are really good tools. You don't need to fully understand them to know, but they are helpful to have in terms of roadmaps. This little baby, this was a baby in a language nest. I thought it was beautiful. This little 6-month-old baby in a full Hawaiian immersion environment. So what you want is you want just a total vibrant language where little kids are speaking the language, playing in the language. That's what you need to have. So we're going to go through some of these concepts, including the GIDs and some kind of critical questions I have tucked in here about capacity, about language planning, about Indigenous excellence and empowerment, resources, education structures, and pedagogy. So these are sort of the areas we're going to have a discussion next week about this stuff. I will give you access to this whole PowerPoint thing. Like I'll send an email out to the group saying, here's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to create a house for these things just so that there's an access point to go and find this stuff. And then also, I'm just real curious. There's been talks about having a couple of statewide groups so that people who are doing work in Indigenous languages can really have some solid networks of language schools and programs. And we're going to keep talking about what that means. Also, there's this program called Miro, M-I-R-O. I think it's a pretty neat program. I have someone who's involved with the First Nations Development Institute as a fellow who shared this software with me. I like it because you can just sort of click things around pretty easy. So you can kind of grab this thing and move it around, and you can sort of put arrows to arrows, so we can sort of drop another thing over here, and we could say this thing, and then we can click this arrow button, and I could draw an arrow from here to there, and it just sort of grabs it. So it does have a lot of really intuitive tools, so we can start to link some things together. And if you can get a free trial, go ahead and do it. But what we're going to do is we're going to just try and make a few boards maybe we'll make one for each of our languages. And I'm really, because then you're also going to have these statewide things. How does the University of Alaska, whether it's Fairbanks, Anchorage, or Southeast, how's that involved? The Alaska Native Language Center, how's that involved? The Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council, how's that involved? The State Board of Education, the ANCSA corporations, the ANCSA village corporations, the tribes, like really trying to create these are visioning exercises to say, who are the key players? And then ideally, how do we blow this thing up so that we feel like, not that it can't fail, but that it's certainly on this thing where it's got its whole own momentum. You know, you're probably never going to have enough language teachers. You're probably never going to have enough language speakers. But you could be in a position 30 years from now where maybe 30% of your population speaks the language. Maybe 50, maybe 100, right? And so trying to sort of envision these things. And as we sort of do these exercises, we're going to do a number of these different things, mapping out the entities that are connected to us. And we're not going to say anything about them. We're just going to say, oh yeah, these guys are involved. These guys are involved. We're not going to do, these guys are involved, but they can't get their act together, right? We're just going to sort of, in a non-judgmental way, map out all the different groups that are connected. Then we might think about what their roles are. Then we might think about the whole context of this thing. Is that way to just like spend the weekend and be ready to answer this question. In 30 years, if your language is safe, what does that look like? Tell us what you think that's going to look like. 30 years from now, your language is safe. Be ready to tell us what that looks like. Then we're going to spend some time thinking about how do we possibly get there. And this is where it takes a lot of the things I think that Moana Jackson was talking about. The collaboration, the non-hierarchical types of things. And we'll talk about a few of those things as we go forward. So, any last thoughts or questions?
Just before we close out and finish off, can we go back to our first person ask how are state I'm fine, and then how are you, and then we just go down the list. So this time, instead of practicing each other's, we just use our own, but we could go in the same order.
Oh, okay, so you'll just say it once?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one that I see is duck juice. So just say, you don't have to teach it to all of us, but just say in your language, how are you? And I am fine.
But answer first and then ask the next person.
Oh, I see. So say I am fine, and then say how are you? Then we'll get the next person to say I am fine. How are you? Oh, beautiful. Okay, I think I got it. So I'll be the colonizer. Duck juice, how are you?
Die lagen senudan hidden.
Salaktuna.
Nakuranga Sani Kanawet.
Yvonne.
Did she call in Sunny?
Ah. Oh, was it? Oh, okay, no, sorry. I'll interrupt and we'll just go in the order of folks who posted earlier. So yeah, you don't have to call anybody's name. You'll just say, I'm fine, and then you'll say, how are you? And then I'll announce who's going next.
Shenja Gunzi, Nenjidoncha.
Suzuk,
Nagujunga, kanokitpin.
Nilatawa,
Asun Doinda.
Jinkasi,
Ishwasa, Khadute, what's the 80?
Hokyunsk, or any other Schmalgak speaker.
Is it how are you and Dakwilawan at Amwilawalu?
Amwalawalu. Wonderful. Okay, that was wonderful. Good job orchestrating that, and I'm glad I understood what we're supposed to do at the end.
I did want to make one comment about the speaker though.
Let's do.
I had my hand up, but I think maybe it didn't get seen. Just that, what his comments got me really thinking about is this question around how much can we change the system versus create the new systems that work for us based on our values, knowledges and practices, including our pedagogies and whatnot. So anyways, that was just my comment on it. When in listening to his speech, it got me thinking down that line of thinking of, kind of, fighting the bad, but then building the new at the same time. And I think many of us are in the systems right now, building the materials and the resources for the new, but that's also a living question in my mind, and in part why we launched completely outside of the system, outside of K-12 and outside of the university, so it could have an independence and a freedom to operate through Indigenous practices and methodologies more freely. But anyways, that's what his comments got me thinking about a bit.
Masi Cho, and yeah, sorry I missed your hand. I'll try and keep an eye out for those hands popping up. And we're going to talk about this again throughout this semester. Yes. When do we build something within the framework, and when do we just ignore it and build our own thing? When do we blow up the Death Star? And then when do we sort of there's always these gradients of these things. So I've got another thing, like a little mapping exercise that we'll talk about probably next week, about like when do we imitate the thing, when do we reject the thing, when do we just ignore the thing, and when do we just do our own thing. And sometimes it's sort of a little bit of each of those things. Wonderful. So keep thinking about two things. One, the organizational map. What are these organizations that are involved? And then we'll talk later. That'll transform into what's the roles of everybody. And maybe someone's got to just, we don't care what those guys do. They want to help us, that's fine, but we don't rely on them. Other things are going to be, this is absolutely critical to what we're trying to do. And the undercurrent here is Indigenous empowerment and excellence and total revitalization. The second thing is, in 30 years, if you said your language was safe, what does that look like? So big dreamers over the weekend. We'll share those ideas on Monday. I think there's only one article next week, so take a look at all the readings. Make sure you're caught up. I think we've read about 6 things so far. So we'll add one more to it. There should be 7, and then we'll catch up next week. Thanks for your time, everybody. You all are amazing folks.
How,
Kinaresek pa si.
Anamase.
Basi.